Hey, gang, welcome back to another episode of the Power 9 podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert. Today's guest has taken life's lessons, both personally and professionally, to fuel the impact he makes on small businesses and guiding people to be deliberate with their lives. We're going to focus on all that and more with my friend, Matt Beecher.
Hey, Aaron. So happy to be here. Thanks.
So before we get started on your journey, I'm going to have you share your pronouns. So if you would please do that, that'll help me guide me on how I'm going to refer to you through the conversation.
Sure thing. It's he, him, his.
Awesome. Great. You have such a fascinating story. And as I've gotten to know you, I've been so excited to be able to share your story with people because I think it can have an impact on people in a lot of different ways. I'm going to start out early on. Let's talk about what does Matt Beecher have in common with Napoleon Dynamite?
Oh, wow. So many things. Moon boots, llamas, quesadillas, many things. Yeah, so I grew up in a little one stoplight town called Preston, Idaho, which is where Napoleon Dynamite was filmed. So I don't know him, but I do know a ton of the extras there. And when I watched that movie, it is a movie of my hometown and my home life.
Yeah, I gotta believe that is just almost like a little surreal. Is it that much? Is it like they have to accentuate some of that stuff to where it's almost like a little over dramatic, but I gotta believe there's some similarities.
Yeah, for sure. So it's dramatic and it's been dramatized. But I went to watch this movie with a bunch of friends when I was in grad school in Boston, and we went to this theater, and I was super jazzed to be able to do it with these friends and say, this is my hometown. And by the end of it, I was like, oh yeah, it's almost so true that it's that much more embarrassing. I don't know. It was a really reckoning moment.
All right. And another thing that you have in common that I think is fascinating with Napoleon Dynamite is the fact that you both were actually raised by your grandparents, Napoleon by his grandma, you by your grandparents, which is very different than anybody that I've ever had on this podcast. So talk about that experience of what that was like.
Oh yeah, it was super defining into who I was then and who I am now. It was amazing. I don't think I would have said that in third or fourth grade when I felt like my parents were super old fashioned. I mean, I remember having kids who'd say, my mom's so old fashioned. She wants to do this and this and this. And I'd be like, yeah, try living with your grandma full time. Right. But it was amazing. I mean, they come from what's been called the greatest generation ever born. They were taught and raised in and were raising their family in World War II era life. And they brought me so many interesting and important values and instruction and teaching and examples. It was amazing. I think they raised 5 children. Their second was my mother, who died during my childbirth right after I was born. And they took me because that was the really only place that I was going to go. My dad went a different direction. And I just every day am grateful for their sacrifice and what I learned under their care.
Yeah. And we're going to get into like that has fueled you to do a lot of different things with your life. And we'll get into that. And I'm not going to get into a lot of the other personal things, but what I do want to say is like you have such a passion for end of life care, and you've done so many different things related to that. And now when I think about that aspect of what you're doing now, is there one specific thing that your grandparents instilled on you when you were a child that you think that maybe a different generation, maybe the boomer generation, wouldn't have been able to instill on you as a growing up as a child?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was unique to them that another generation wouldn't be as prone to do it, but they really did teach the importance of staying true to a few principles and letting those principles guide you no matter what. And I think some of those principles of hard work and honesty and compassion for other people, those are certainly taught in other generations by other people. But I mean, I learned them under their care in an era where, I mean, they'd gone through the Great Depression and they'd lost people in wars and in other things that lots of my friends' parents didn't experience. So I think probably it's the true to principle and the true to the principles of honesty, integrity, hard work, and compassion that probably made the biggest difference.
Yeah. Yeah. What was your high school experience like? What were you into? What was your jam?
Do you know, it was, I'm tall, I'm 6'6", and I was kind of expected at that height to play basketball. And so I did for a while. I didn't love it. So I came into high school from middle school playing basketball. I played the first couple of years in high school and I was just like, I don't love this. And I'm not awesome at it. I'm still tripping over painted lines sometimes, still finding my own kind of growing limbs. So I kind of left that scene and hung out with people who were more in the scene of like academics and music and other kinds of things. I studied a language. And so that was probably more where I landed, which in a one stoplight hometown, basketball was the thing to do. The things I did were not. So that was a
Yeah.
little bit of socially alienation, but in the end, like I think it's played out well.
Yeah. Yeah. Where'd you go to college? Undergrad?
I went to Brigham Young University to do my undergrad. Yep.
Yeah. What was you're the first person I think I've ever met like known that has went to Brigham Young University. What was campus life like, and what was it like going to school there?
Well, we win the award every year for being the #1 stone cold and sober school in the United States, right? Church-owned school
Yeah.
by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So
Yeah.
a lot of their standards are made part of what they call the honor code, but it's great. I mean, it's the largest privately owned university, one of the largest privately owned universities in the country. It's a ton of students. The campus life is fun and engaging, and I was going to say diverse. It's probably not that diverse compared to others. But for me, coming from small town Idaho, it was a lot of people from all over the country that really helped me kind of become more fully who I was. My one stoplight town interests now had companions and friends that shared those.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had mentioned to me when we did our prep call that you did a mission trip and you went to Australia. Was that pretty common? I feel like that that was pretty common, especially focused on that faith.
Yeah, that's right. So in our faith, we grow up feeling that going on a mission, which is a 2-year kind of excursion, is expected for young men and encouraged if it's of interest for young women. So it's kind of, you grow up in that faith feeling like I'm going to go serve as a missionary in some part of the world. So yeah, it's a very at BYU, there's such a high number of people who speak other languages, and we have the most diverse language training program because you have people all over the world there who've gone on their missions to these other places. Yeah, so it was awesome. That 2 years was totally irreplaceable in the way that it changed me.
What were some of the things that you did on your mission trip?
Oh, we work a lot with just the people in the places we find them who have needs. And so I worked with a lot of places that had socioeconomic needs, and places where there was a lot of substance abuse and where there were a lot of single parent homes and kids who were in trouble. So I grew up in a pretty sheltered, wonderful community, but to be able to be among those people and really see life in an unprivileged, raw form really changed the way I felt and shaped me in so many ways. Shaped me economically, shaped me politically, shaped me spiritually. It was awesome.
And then, so then you went and you got your MBA at Harvard, and not many people that I know went to Harvard. And so I think that's fascinating. So I feel like this is a stupid question, but I'm just going to ask it. Why did you go to Harvard? Was there was it just because there's a lot of great, there's a lot of great Ivy League schools that do really great things, but was there something besides the stigma of Harvard that made you decide you wanted to go there?
It's not a stupid question. Especially when the price tag came up in front of me, I was like, why would I want to go here? Right.
Right.
Yeah. So I applied to a variety of schools and was privileged to be admitted to a few for Masters of Business. I pretty much wanted to do business. Harvard is known for a lot of things in its business program. One in particular is the way that they teach is through what they call their case method, which dives into specific case studies of businesses every day. So every day I'm prepping 3 to 5 different cases, and I'm learning about these businesses. And it's not a lecture of principles, it's more of a discussion of how do you apply these things. And I'm somebody who loves teaching and facilitating and learning. And this method of learning was just super attractive to me. And so, yeah, and they're well known for developing general managers rather than a specific kind of management, whether it's, finance focused or marketing focused. And at the time, that's really kind of what drew me there. And it did not fail to meet those expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was your first gig out of college? Out of Harvard?
Yeah, so I took a job at a consulting firm in Washington, D.C. called the Corporate Executive Board, a research firm that kind of published best practice case studies across different functions. I was in their strategy practice. So I was tasked with taking our research and insights into heads of strategy and heads of mergers and acquisitions of Fortune 100 companies, which was awesome. It was a steep learning curve, but I met some really, really amazing thinkers and doers in the world of big business.
How long did you stay there?
I was there for, I can't remember the number of years. You're making me think all these details. I was probably there for 4 to 5 years doing that consulting work. Yeah.
Yeah. And what made you want to transition out of that?
Yeah, like many people who do consulting, I wanted to start to run something. I wanted to be able to make a bigger management difference in the entity that I was in. And, I led a team in the consulting firm, but I wanted to build something that was a bit more kind of everyday business. And my passion for healthcare, and particularly this end of life care, elderly care, kind of shaped by my grandpa and grandparents, became something I wanted to jump into and get after. So I landed after that. I landed at a couple of different jobs that I worked at the Mayo Clinic and here at United Health Group in Minneapolis, which is what brought me to Minnesota.
Yeah. And what do you think? So if you had the chance, would you go back? I think just the East Coast is such a very different lifestyle, especially, like you mentioned, obviously Boston and DC, and I'm sure you traveled into some of the other larger cities like New York, stuff like that. What do you like about the Twin Cities here versus how different of a life it is on the East Coast?
Yeah. Oh man, I grew up in this one stoplight town, too small, right? And I love big cities. I love big cities, but to raise a family there, it's too big. There's too much going on for what I wanted in raising a family. And I was single all the years that I lived there, which was a different life. So in a Goldilocks fashion of not too little, not too big, the Twin Cities is just right, especially for raising a family. It's big enough to give me all the things that I might want out of the city and small enough to feel like the values and the hometown kind of life I had growing up is something I can replicate for my kids and build a community in. So really totally love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were at Optum and you were at Mayo. When did you get into entrepreneurship and then taking that passion that you have for end of life care and then transitioning it into an actual business?
Yeah, it's a great question that is a really big pivot point kind of in my history. It was a really deliberate thing that happened to me. I got these jobs where I worked at the Mayo Clinic at one point, and then I moved more fully to Optum and United Health Group. And though I loved so many things about it and appreciated the bigger company scene, I just got super frustrated with the inability to make change happen and the slowness by which that change could happen. And a lot of people feel that, but it was acute. And I remember feeling the pain that was coming from driving home at night. And I remember watching the sunset as I would drive down 169 from my office to my home and just feeling like there's another day that the work that I've accomplished has no impact that's going to be measurable for years and years. And I got to make a bigger difference. And so I made that choice to leave and to do something that was more entrepreneurial because of that feeling. And I remember a lot of people saying, well, when you move to be more entrepreneurial, you're going to lose all the security and safety. Are you ready for that? And the feeling of being smothered, and with great respect to people who work in corporate places that don't feel that smothering, but the smothering I was feeling was unacceptable. It was untenable. And I said, I got to make a change. So I made that change deliberately. I left those companies and I decided to buy a couple of elder care facilities and do what my passion was about and like care for the elderly and their families and change the laws and the legislation and the rates and the rules. So I made that jump pretty deliberately from one comfortable place that was smothering to a uncomfortable place that was definitely liberating too.
Yeah. So, one of the big conversations that we're having now today, right, or these days, is the war for talent. I have to imagine that had to be one of the biggest things that you were focused on. Especially if you care about end of life care, how are finding that talent, and how do you get them to be as passionate about that as you are? How did you manage that?
Yeah, it's hard. Like the war for talent today is worse than it was then because of all that we've seen. And they don't make a lot of money. They do really hard work. They're helping people with personal cares and really intimate experience around aging. And those frontline caregivers are making minimum wage or just above. And that is a really hard balance to find. I've learned there though, and I've come to really strongly believe that there are good people everywhere, and that there are people that want to do work that has meaning, and that their desire to do that work with meaning will overshadow their need for other things, such that I come to a purpose and a cause and a mission that will keep them strong and connected to what I'm doing. And it's not easy for sure, but I think it's possible. And so it was a fight that we fought every day in, day out in that kind of business.
How long did you own that business?
I was there for a couple of years. It was probably three and a bit years that I was in those facilities. In the process of that, I actually partnered with and joined another larger company in the area doing that work that was innovative and growing. So all in, I was in entrepreneurial roles there for probably 4.5, 5 years total.
Yeah. And then, so this is where it all kind of comes together for you, because you took the EOS process and you implemented it into your own business, and you saw firsthand the impact that it had. And then you decided that once you transitioned out of that business, you were going to then use this to help other businesses. And so fast forward talk about we've had a couple of EOS implementers on. I think of you as being weren't you one of the earlier people to adopt this whole philosophy, whether it be as a consultant or in business in general?
Yeah, so EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system, is a set of tools and systemic thinking that is, and we say this as EOS implementers, that's not like rocket science and it's not new. It's really standard, awesome, traditional thinking that makes a difference. And it was very congruent with what I had taught in large companies and large company consulting. One of the very areas that I focused on when I was a large company consultant and traveling with strategy leaders in so many industries was, how do you translate strategy into action? We would talk about that phrase all the time. And the belief that if you can't execute on it, it doesn't matter what you've built in your slide deck, it doesn't matter. You've got to turn it into action and consistently applied action. So I've lived with those principles for 25 years in a way that I really resonate. I had read the book Traction years and years ago, but while I was operating my business, a friend of mine knew I was kind of struggling on a few fronts and sent me the book Traction. And I was like, oh yeah, I feel like I've read this. I'm going to reread it. And when I read it, it was absolutely gold. It just spoke to my soul about, hey, here's how we need to think about dividing between what we're doing today and in the short term, and how do we think about the long term? How do we marshal data and insights around analytics with a focus on people? And how do we think about all those pieces together? And that's really what came. So yeah, I found EOS kind of as a business owner and lived it for the 4 or 5 years that I ran a business. And now I've been doing it full time as an implementer for the last 3 years. So I've kind of lived with EOS in my life for the last 8 years, and it's proven itself over and over again.
So I know that the life of an EOS implementer can be, there's just so many moving pieces, and there's a lot of balls in the air, and you have to be really, you have to strike a delicate balance between wanting to touch as many people as you can, but yet also be able to get into their business. What's kind of your threshold of like clients that you're able to work with at a time?
Yeah, I think the pure answer from somebody who would say, hey, what happens across all of EOS implementers would be like, hey, between 20 and 30 clients is the most you can work with at a time and do good work. I think 30 is a lot. And in fact, I probably would always skew less on that because I find myself doing a lot of thinking and answering questions and making myself available to help clients. So it's probably 22 handfuls of clients that I would want to serve at a time. That's right
Yeah.
for me. And it might be different for others.
Yeah. Do you feel like this allows you to have the balance of the lifestyle that you want to live and be a business owner, where I think, you're basically independent, right? And you've got some resources that you utilize, but that do you enjoy the fact that this is I would almost classify this a little bit as a lifestyle business. You get to choose the amount of work that you want to do. You can ratchet it up or you can dial it back if you need to.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
And I prize that and take advantage of it like crazy. I've got 4 kids at home, 12 and younger, and I am going to be there for them. And this allows me to do that for sure. Do I miss the opportunity to be a little bit more fully deployed inside a company with a team of 100 people that eventually depend on me to pay paychecks and grow their? Yeah, I miss that for sure. But the trade-off's been really nice for this phase of my life for sure.
Yeah. I think so here's another curveball question I want to ask you, and I didn't prep you on this, so just work with me here. You recently, EOS came out with a franchise model, and you are now a franchisee of that business. What has changed in that transition into the franchise model as far as resources or things like that? What was created more as an opportunity for you in that?
There's probably a lot of weeds in here that I won't get into, but
Yep.
not a lot has really changed. Not much has changed at all for the clients of EOS. Their experience should be the same. And in general, my work with them is pretty much standard, the same. But EOS deciding to move to a franchise, and with great respect, there are people who left the EOS world because the franchise didn't feel right for them. And I'm respectful of a variety of different business systems that are out there. I'm respectful of all that. EOS did it in some senses to be able to grow and to be able to say, we can't scale this if we don't have more full control over our IP, more consistent control over our brand, more consistent control over the experience and the quality of the people who are implementers. So by that choice, EOS has turned toward a growth trajectory that they couldn't do before. So with that, the resources are much more like we have a lot more support for how we teach our craft. We have a lot more support for how we market and do business development and find more clients. We have a lot more just more people in the community that we can connect to. So it's been good in that regard. And of course, there's pros and cons to both. I remember sitting in a group of folks who were EOS implementers saying, we're entrepreneurs. You're going to make us be a franchise? That franchise feels super suffocating. And someone turning to me and saying, didn't you come to this because you were tired of being suffocated in a big company? Right? Yeah. So there's some of that, but it is not at all suffocating in my experience. And it's working out, I think, really well for what EOS intends to do to the marketplace.
Yeah. One of the questions I ask every guest, if they're comfortable with me asking, and you gave me a little bit of the green light, but what does the future hold for you, right? Like, are you happy with continuing to drive forward with your EOS model? Do you have a desire in the future to get into being an entrepreneur into a different business? What do you see for yourself moving forward in the next 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, something like that?
Yeah. I love the question. I was just telling a friend today, I was like, I probably don't see myself doing this exact same thing for the next 15 years or 20 years, however long I'm going to keep working. And I'm in my 40s. So I feel like I've got a lot of experience and I can make a big difference with clients that I serve. But I would love to have another couple of reps to grow business in my experience. So yeah, I'm thinking about it all the time. And I think about elder care in particular. So I'm doing stuff on the side of my desk always to keep those balls in the air and to consider like, where's the market moving and how can I use the God-given gifts and experiences that I have to do the most good for the most people? And right now, EOS matches what I need to do that. And I love it. And it makes a big difference on my clients and their businesses and their lives. It helps me stay focused to my family, but there's probably something else ahead. And I wish I could clone my time and have more hours in the day like everybody does, right? But yeah, so that's a long way to say, yes, there's other things ahead. I'm happy where I'm at for now.
Do you utilize an executive assistant or a virtual assistant or anything like that, or do you do everything yourself?
No, I totally believe in the concept of finding people who have unique abilities where I don't. So I've got probably 3 people that I contract with and employ to help me run my practice, as well as to do investigating work on these other things I mentioned I want to do
Yeah.
outside of EOS one day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's the Dan Sullivan, who not
Yep,
how.
that's right.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I subscribe to that philosophy. Well, I want to make sure people can figure out how to connect with you. So after we get done with the 9 questions, I'm going to ask that you share how people can reach out to you. So let's dig in to the 9 questions, because this is a great opportunity for people to get to know you outside of all the standard questions that I ask as part of this. So can you confirm to me that you have no idea what I'm about to ask you?
Confirmed.
All right. Got it. All right. If you could be any animal, what would you be and why?
I've always wanted to be a giraffe because I'm a tall guy, but giraffes are really tall and they have a vision and a view that other animals just don't have. So while they might not have as much agility, I want to see the view they see. So I'd choose a giraffe, no question.
Oh man, you've been asked that before. All right, you answered that way too fast and way too good. What is a guilty pleasure that you indulge in?
Oh man, I don't answer this so fast because I'm nervous about saying all the guilty pleasures. So here's my guilty pleasure. I love staying at nice hotels, and I am cheap in as much as I'm not going to pay for it. So I'll accumulate points and rewards along the way, but eventually I'll earn enough to stay at a nice hotel. And at that hotel, it's got to have an all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet. I want to sit by the pool on a breakfast morning and eat everything on the breakfast buffet.
I love these. I love the answer to that question. That is so good.
Okay.
If you could be any color in the the big Crayola crayon 152 case deal, if you could be any color in the 152 case, what color would you be?
I want to be, so this sounds like a quick answer. It's just coming to mind out of pocket. I would be chartreuse. So I'd be that really bright neon green to just like provide, like, that's just who I am. I'm kind of got a effervescent kind of personality, and I want to direct people, go this way, not that. So I want to be chartreuse.
All right. I like it. What piece of technology will change the world?
Oh, wow. Will yet in the future. Is that it?
Yep.
Wow. You're going to make me think. I would like to think I could speak about the metaverse or something like it, but I think I watch self-driving cars get better and better, and I think that's going to change the world in a lot of ways we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, good answer. All right, this one I did special for you. What is the lowest grade you've ever received, and in what class?
I had a C minus. I had a C minus in calculus. And I will say this feels really dirty to say this because I feel like I did it in the dark. But I calculated when I was in high school that the GPA that went to figured out rankings was not calculated on your very last semester. So I gave calculus a pass and got a C minus because it wouldn't count.
Oh, well, at least you took calculus. You're like 2 steps ahead. Well, whatever is just beyond basic math is what I took. So cheers to you for even getting that far. That's probably why you went to Harvard. What is one quality in a person that impresses you?
Oh, it's kindness. It is just kindness. If I watch somebody treat a server at a restaurant poorly or nicely, it makes all the difference in how I feel about them. If someone treats an animal or a child or someone who's elderly, someone who doesn't deserve kindness, but they get kindness, like that, that's what I'm watching for. It's the number one kind of characteristic I think that drives my affiliation and connection with the people I care about the most.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. What is a quote that you always refer to?
And it's a little bit wordy, but he said this: the probability that we may fail in the struggle ought not to deter us from the support of a cause we to be just. So this idea of like, if we're going to fail, that shouldn't stop us.
Yeah. Where's your happy place?
I think my happy place is a Saturday morning with my kids and hearing them play with and laugh with each other and just hearing their laughter on a Saturday morning, nothing else to do before the schedule of basketball or swim team or whatever else we're doing happens. Just, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, love it. Okay, last one. When I say the term mentor, who do you think of and why?
I think of Clayton Christensen. He's a guy who's pretty well written, The Innovator's Dilemma, The Innovator's Solution. And he has been the most engaging writer in terms of business and life and how to blend principles that make a difference in both. And I've had a chance to work with him on a couple of different things that he's done. And it's shaped the way that I think about my work. It's shaped the way that I am a dad. It's been incredible. I have a lot of others that I'm a little closer to and familiar in family and other relationships, but he's the one I think of first.
Oh, good answer. Nice. How can people get a hold of you, Matt?
Oh, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn under Matt Beecher, Beecher. And yeah, I'm easy to find. LinkedIn is probably the best way.
All right. I'm going to put I'll put links to your stuff on our show notes here so people can just hot link it so they don't have to go searching around for you and stuff. When we were introduced by Brian Adamic, I think like we talked on the phone and then you and I grabbed breakfast because you wanted to get to know me a little bit and make sure that I wasn't a complete fraud. And so, but I'll tell you, you are the person of all the people I've met we've built this Coalition 9 thing together. And of all the facilitators and stuff like that, you asked me the most questions. And that almost like a reverse test, right? Like I want people on our squad that have the highest level of curiosity, and you have such a high level of curiosity. And I just have to make sure and point that out because that's one quality that I really, really appreciate about you.
Well, thank you. I love that one of the values of Coalition 9 is curiosity. It is who I think great leaders are, people who are always in the relentless pursuit of finding the right way and the better way and being vulnerable to what might not be right. And I'll just say, I don't mean to just be reciprocal in a compliment, but the chance to meet with you was really wonderful. I do a lot of work trying to find contacts with small and medium-sized growing businesses as an implementer. Just immediately resonated with me as the kind and tribe of people that I want to associate with and that are doing the kinds of things that our folks are doing. They're changing business and the world 9 leaders at a time. And it's really happening. And I just shout out to the group that we lead. Like I think every month we get together in that group of 9 people that I get the privilege to be with, it just is confirmed over and over again. Like there is power in the numbers of people who are like-minded.
So Chris Probst yesterday was at an event and he came up to me and he gave me a big hug and he said, he goes, God, I love Matt Beecher and I love our group. So there's another shout out to you. Yeah, man. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate you being on the show. I really appreciate the time that you have taken to help us build this community and more people need to get to know you. So I'm going to make sure that we put your stuff on there. So on behalf of Matt Beecher, this has been the Power of 9 podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert, and I want to thank you for the privilege of your time.